Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 213.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers who are looking to shoot lower scores. Dedicated to professional club fitting, putting and short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on professional club fitting, putting and short game improvement, and effective practice techniques, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time. It's great to have Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting back on the show to talk about a putter fitting topic that I'm not sure has been clearly discussed in the putter fitting world before, the role of putter shaft flex in your putter. I love the discussion that you're about to hear, so let's get to it.
Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 213 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And welcome back for the seventh time, putter fitting and putting instruction guru, Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting in Indianapolis, Indiana. Come on, I know that. This is really an interesting topic that we're going to talk about today, and it's putter shaft flex. And I'm not sure I've ever really seen or heard anybody talk about it as much as I think it's going to be discussed here. But I don't think it's rocket science, really. And the title of the podcast, when I put it up, is Making Sense of Putter Shaft Flex. And I think we're going to do that today as we talk. So, Bruce, welcome back. It's great to get to talk with you again.
Well, Tony, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So our last interview was I think November of 2022, and you talked about a lot of things going on. So help us to catch up a little bit about what's going on in your world.
Well, we're transitioning into finally, after a number of years and starts and stops, and the first batch of the putters is coming out probably in about 6-8 weeks. I'm in line at my manufacturers in Indianapolis. And I'm in line with some other stuff. So we're hoping to get those putters built. And it's a kind of one more last of the bucket list is to be able to try and do it this way. So that's the biggest thing. And still working with the instruction guys that I work with, the colleagues, Mike Adams, Terry Rolls, and the Ultimate Golf Lesson, and continuing that research and progress there, and learning how different people operate. And the more we do it, the more we find that it's an individual thing. So you never can talk in absolutes. You're always, what's this individual doing, and how do we help him, as opposed to, well, everybody should do this or everybody should do that.
Yeah.
So really fun.
And you were down at the show with them teaching a class, I think, right?
We did a one-day seminar. Really had a lot of fun with that. It was eye-opening, I think, for a lot of instructors, or it seems to be, because I've heard from a lot of them now in this past year about incorporating into their scheme. And that's why I think the thing I'm most proud of is that anybody can talk, we can have a conversation, and they can see what we're doing and they can apply it to their method. And so I like this, I have this preference, I have this way of doing things. And so Bruce's research has helped me understand what I do best. And that makes me feel good, because there's no one method, and you can look at it two ways. You can try and teach them all, or you can get really good at one. And that's totally an individual choice, and you should go with what you feel works best for you.
And that you get results that you can be confident with and believe in. Yeah.
Kind of leads into our putter shaft discussion, because it's all about individuals there.
Oh, yeah. Well, so again, our topic is putter shaft flex and its influence on putting performance. And, I'm not gonna be surprised for what you're gonna say at this point, when did you first start thinking about putter
Yeah,
shaft flex? Because
that's always a
it's
common.
always Mr. Palmer,
That's
but
right.
still.
He used to just amazing time with him. I hear it as, gosh, almost 40. Well, it is 40 years later. And I'm still talking about the stuff that he and I talked about. It. Yeah, what a blessing, And it was basically that, let first of all, you got to look at Mr. Palmer and you say, well, this is the ultimate hitter of a golf ball as opposed to swinging the putter, right? And
Yeah.
so you get guys that have this long flowing stroke, and you got guys that pop it, you got guys that swing it and hit it, like Tiger, and so all different. Well, Mr. Palmer he liked the feel of the strike. Okay. So one of the things he learned pretty early on in his tinkering was that the stiffer he made that shaft in his putter, the more feedback he got on the strike, that the shaft wouldn't absorb the blow.
Yeah.
And what he found out was that he worked for Alcoa for a while, right? He was sponsored by Alcoa. So aluminum shafts. What did they? Well, he never liked those. They were kind of mushy feeling, he thought. And so he was always looking for steel. And I think that, one of the breakthroughs was putting an extra stiff. He put an extra stiff dynamic pattern shaft in his Tommy Armour blade. And, oh, hey, look at there. Got it. And that was probably in the 60s sometime, probably when he was,
Yeah.
and so he would continually talk about it. And not that, one of the greatest putters of all time is the design by Arnold Palmer. And Mr. Palmer never used it because of the head speed shaft. It was too soft.
Huh.
And so and you and I have talked about this, that then you take that bit of information and you look at other guys, right? And you say, well, why did so-and-so use a certain putter? And why did so-and-so use a certain putter? And Hickory guys, and, all that background stuff. And there was a feel preference. Let's just start there. That everybody has a feel preference, and the shaft has something to do with it. And then how that all blossoms is the fun part of the discussion. But for the most part, that was where I learned it. And then just the opportunity and be encouraged to try something, right?
Yeah.
What if we did this? What if we put this in this, or what if we, and what would we get? And, 100 rejections for every one that might've made sense.
But he was going to do it.
Yeah, we did one. I'll bet we did one every day.
Wow.
For 10 years. That we would fool around with one every day, and then he'd hit some putts with it. He'd give it a try. Mr. Palmer liked lighter heads and stiffer shafts in his putter because the lighter head was easier, took less energy to get started and to transition, right? So he'd kind of pick it up and hinge it and then pop it, right? Well, with a heavy head, it took more effort to pick it up. Well, that was bigger wrist. That was a bigger wrist set, longer than he wanted. Then he had to try and hit it. And so he was constantly making putters really light and then welding weight back on to see where it could go. You can always make them heavier. It's really hard to make them lighter.
Yeah.
So he would peel everything off and start over and then weld it back into place to where it get. But he'd get, what was interesting, and I've mentioned this before, one of the 7 telecasts, is it almost always ended up swing weighting about the same as his sand wedge.
Yeah. Right.
Which that one was stuck with me forever, was that he was just looking for a similar feel to what he had across the board.
And it's funny you say that too, and I don't know how much you follow Tom Wishon's stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, Tom, I know you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in his, sort of more classic book, I mean, when he talks about putters and swing weighting and, swing weighting, well, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Right.
But he's always talking in there sort of D4, D6, D8 swing weight, which is, again, like a sand wedge.
And it's crazy light compared to today, right? When's the last time you swing weighted a putter that was less than E something?
And I got one that's right around that right now. That's even though it's like a, 510 gram total weight.
Right.
So,
right. Well, see, now that's interesting, and and I've got one in my prototypes for the new company that's G9, I think, or whatever the end of the
Oh, wow.
scale is. But it only weighs, it's about the same. It's about 500 grams.
Yeah.
That one for me was too far, right? I went too far.
You went over the edge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's luckily a heat gun, and about 5 minutes, that experiment can go away. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've talked about some of the pieces of this a little bit. I dive a little deeper because weight and balance are important.
right.
Hitter, swinger, tempo, softs.
Yeah.
I will mention though, the best putter on our junior college team, or at least the one who I think typically is, he's got a 500-gram putter, and he's got a shaft that I know is one of the ones that's got a very stiff tip. At least a stiff
Yeah.
tip, but
Yeah.
a stiff shaft.
Now,
For him.
does he, let's just take him for an example, Tony. Is he more of a smooth transition swinger kind of player, or is he got a little burst of energy in his
He's
stroke?
got a little burst of energy.
Yeah. So see, that falls in line, right? That this feel, and for the most part, that's what a player is going to do, right? Is he's looking for a feel, and I call it, you have conscious preferences and you have subconscious preferences. And so your body's looking for a feel. Your mind is is going through the logic of it, right? So the conscious preferences you have is where the marketers will find you. They'll hit a nerve with, this sounds like it's something that would work, right?
Yeah.
But then you get it done, and you get it in your hands, and your hands basically don't like it. And so it doesn't match what you're doing with your stroke. So you either change your stroke to match what you got in your hands, which happens a lot, or you just reject it and you go back and try and look for something else.
Yeah.
So the first thing that and I'll just go through what we're asking on our, just in a interview style, is the first thing we want to know is, where's the effort in your stroke? Do you have a smooth takeaway, or is it pretty abrupt? And from being on your putt lab that you see the rates of acceleration peak at different times in the backswing and the forward swing, right?
Yeah.
And so, are you quick off the ball, or are you slow off the ball? And then when you get in transition, do you lag? Does the putter lag a little bit? Do your hands start forward before the putter quits swinging? Or do you move more in sync, where your hands stop, putter stops, hands go forward, putter goes forward? And so we want to know all those things, because we know a little bit about what weight and shaft flex will do for you. That's, I think, probably one of the most important things to remember, is that it's not, you don't want to look at it page by page. So I want to consider weight and shaft flex and my style, and I want to do that in one group. I don't want to pick stuff apart, because if you do, it doesn't consider the other things that are going on. And it goes back to our conversation about weight.
Yeah. Right.
The heavier the heads, the stiffer the shaft you're going to appreciate. So we've got kind of we call it proprietary. It's not really, but it's how we use the equipment that was available to rate these putters and say, okay, this one is this value, and we think this value is good for this type of stroke. And so that's how we've started. And it goes back to MOI matching. It goes back to swing weighting. It goes to overall weight. It goes to bend profiles in the shaft. All of it. We're using all of it. Anything that's available to us, we're using it to consider it.
It's a deep dive into it.
It is. But once you get into it, like someone like you, with your background, you'd go, oh yeah, right. It's just miniature. It's we talked about maybe how shaft flex influences. Well, it's just in miniature of what the golf swing's like, right, and how you'd fit a golf swing.
Yeah.
So we know from the original test that we first did, was we knew we could change a player's tempo by changing the flex in a shaft, or in a flex in a shaft in like heads. So we had a 340 grain slant neck model, answer style model. They were all exactly the same. And we were putting soft shafts in them and stiff shafts in them. And it was remarkable and then put them on putt lab. And it was remarkable to see how their tempo changed. And so
Their
we've
tempo
used,
changed, okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
their
think
tempo
for a
would
second.
actually change. So they
Yeah.
would go from a 3 beat. Let's say they had a long pause in their backswing and then kind of a rush to go forward. Okay. That type of pattern.
Yeah.
Well, we put them in a stiffer shaft and all of a sudden that transition got quicker. And they didn't lag in transition as much. They moved more in sync. So I think it was just the feedback they were getting from the shaft relative to their right hand. And so now, can you quantify it? Probably not. But you can keep asking the player how it feels, and then you can look at the results and say, he's timing it up a little bit better. He's, we think that one of the things that this helps in just looking at this area will help you find the center of the putter more often. That you're less likely to change your rhythms, and you'll find the center of the putter more often if we can help you with the shaft. Yeah. Just one factor, right? Just one of the many factors. But then what we're looking for is, do you want to enhance the feel of what you do right now, or are you looking to make a change? So the obvious relationship to that is speed control. And your rhythm and your timing, right? Are you looking to get slower? Are you looking to be a little quicker? Do you think you'd be better with a more upbeat tempo in your stroke? Then we can help you with that, and we can help you, that maybe that matches up. And there's some things you can look for. If you're real slow in some area of your stroke and real fast in the other, then you got to decide if you're going to be slow and slow or fast and fast. Because the bursts are what everybody's talking about now, right? You're trying to gravity fed downswings and how I move the putter. Well, that's just a way of going slow and slow. And it disregards the fact that you can be fast and do just as well, right? It's just, what is your personality? What is your swing type?
And
What
that gets into so many different things, like, the people that, that are saying that everybody ought to have a longer backstroke and a shorter follow through, or an equal backstroke with the follow through and all that.
Yeah. Well, I got as it was my life, I made a post on Instagram showing an old one of Tiger Woods and how Tiger was taking it back, and then he was accelerating at a rate greater than gravity right up until the ball, and then he would stop. He'd hit the brakes. And so what people looked at that right away, they looked at it and they see one frame of a stroke and they said, well, that's a decel pattern. It is not a decel pattern. It's a decel like crashing into a wall with your car. Yeah, you decel, but you weren't trying.
Yeah.
So I hate it when, I just get disappointed when it's the line starts, everybody should, or everybody does.
Right.
Because, man, that just makes a mess for the others that it doesn't work. Right.
Yeah.
And so you look at the stroke and you go, what are we trying to do here? Does this burst of energy that creates this acceleration, is it a detriment, or is it how he judges speed? To tell Arnold Palmer to swing the club in a pendulum style, he'd hit himself in the foot. So, because there was a definite hit to his stroke. Now, again, my generation, right? But you take a guy like Crenshaw, and to tell Ben that he should hit it harder, disaster.
Or right? Lauren Roberts, maybe.
Or right? Lauren Roberts, even better example. Thank you. Yeah, Lauren was a long, smooth stroke, right? No extra energy in that stroke whatsoever. So you want to look at the player's personality and what do you feel comfortable doing, right? And you might have a player that has no feel for that. I don't know, Bruce, what's best? I get that a lot, what's best for me? Well, I don't know. What would you be comfortable doing? And one of the things you can ask yourself is, under pressure, whatever your level of pressure is, right? Under pressure, you have a tendency to slow down or speed up?
I know mine. It's leave putt short.
Yeah.
Inside of 10 feet.
So does it leaving it short? Does that come from a decel?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you start to think, all right, do I feel like I've got too much energy coming and that's why I quit on the stroke?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then you can start fooling around and thinking, well, what could I do to help me sustain or maintain that feel all the way through the stroke, finish the stroke.
Yeah.
But that's a combination of things, as you know, because you've tried a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
What weight works best for me? Am I fighting the weight? Do I overswing? Like Stroke Lab, they figured out that the Callaway people figured out with that Stroke Lab that if they changed the engineering in the shaft, they could shorten your stroke, and it worked. And it was a combination of counterweight and graphite and steel, and it worked. So if there's somebody out there that says, well, changing the shaft doesn't change things, there's a perfect example right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely did.
Yeah.
And now, does it work for everybody? Does it work for a hitter? Not so good, you know? And so it's, and maybe I can be accused of, but I've seen a lot of great strokes that were hits. The player hit the ball, especially on short ones, that it's just a hit. And they try and hold the face square and hit the back of the ball with the putter. And that is a different mentality feel than swinging the putter through the ball.
I'm trying to think. Snedeker, that's the one I'm thinking.
Sneds is a perfect example, right? We're coaching away from it a little bit, so we won't see as many. But I can tell you that I've got a number of players that I've worked with that we've had that conversation. And that, would you be better off just trying to, we call it the tap stroke, especially inside 10 feet, 8 feet. Would you be better off giving up on the idea of swinging the putter and just focused on impact? Because speed control is not such an issue at 10 feet. You should be able to, you're going to have a feel for rolling the ball 10 feet. It's 40 feet that you need to feel for speed, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you're, and more so, I shouldn't say 40, but I think that I'm in a group of instructors where the players are coming at us and going, we need to make more 20 footers. And so that puts you in the twilight zone.
Everybody wants that.
Yeah. Well, as kids, as these young kids, young people start hitting the ball better and hitting a lot of greens, I'm not making enough mid-range stuff. Well, you're making right on what the math says you should. I understand that you don't want to be average. That I understand. But you want, what it takes to make that 20 footer is some pretty subtle stuff.
Yes.
And you gotta be aware of it, and if you can't handle being aware of it, then you need to hit the ball better, because you're never going to have the level of expertise to make that 20 footer if you can't handle the subtle stuff. That's just, it is what it is. Yeah. I've heard, one of the things it tickles me, there's certain things that guys in my community, and I put myself maybe above my station, but that we all say the same things. Number one is, you will never hear any of us say putting is easy. Putting is hard, and it's complicated, and it's mechanical, and it's analytical, and it's all those things. If you want to be at a high level, you can't overlook it. You can't make it easy on yourself, because it just won't happen.
Yeah.
So, and
you can't do it by not practicing and blah, 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 all that.
We're getting away from shaft flex, but it is all part of that, right?
Right.
That I need a specific, to make a 20 footer, I need a very specific rhythm with absolute face control. And the shaft lends itself to that. Now, having said that, Tony, the one thing that we don't talk about is that I disregard the torque issue.
I didn't even think about that, but right.
Okay, because most of the torque that you see in a measurement, like, for example, Capto does a great job of measuring torque that you might feel on an off-center hit. That is sourced in your hands, not in the tip of the shaft. And the proof of it is, take a putter and grab it by the grip end and grab it by the head and twist it. Where do you feel the torque? You don't feel the torque in the head end. You feel the torque in the grip end. And so if you've got a soft shaft, or worse than, you have you relax your hands in transition and you relax your hands at impact. Then when you mishit it, the torque it's going to torque, but it's going to twist from your hands. It's not going to twist from,
because the head is twisted.
The head. Now, in the robot, you measure with a robot where you got a fixed point, right? Then you still see some torque, but that's as much the flex of the shaft as it is the twist of the shaft. And how much does the shaft recoil, or how much does it absorb the hit? And that goes back to Arnold. How much do you want this shaft to absorb the feel of the hit? Do you want a dead passive? See, my guess is that if you're going the long short with a gravity fed stand, the gravity assist stroke, I call it, as opposed to you controlling the speed, that you're going to want a softer hit because that matches kind of what you're trying to do with the speed of it. And so you're going to look for a softer collision with the ball. And the guys that are still accelerating through the ball, they're probably looking at a stiffer feel.
Yeah.
You just don't want that. Nike, Nike, I was a Nike staffer at the time, and Nike did a lot of work with vibration and sensitivity, player sensitivity to vibration and impact. And they had a line of putters that dealt with that. Problem was that Nike was looking for an optimal. They thought there was an optimal frequency that would be harmonic with your putting stroke. Problem was everybody had a different putting stroke, had different preference. And so that kind of verified what I was learning from Arnold, that his preference would have been a higher frequency, faster rhythm vibration, where somebody like me who doesn't create a lot of speed with effort, more just I got ultra long stroke and slow, I'm not going to like that harsh feel. So you can start right there.
Yeah.
And so, and then, like I said, we talked about tempo. We talked about, are you a hitter or swinger? Do you lag in transition, or are you in sync? Is the putter in sync with your hands? Do you, are you trying to correct something or enhance something? That's basically what you should consider. Because, I'm sure you get the same thing. Bruce, is it worth me spending $400 for a shaft on a putter? And
I haven't ever done that with anybody.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a rationale, a sensible rationale in my mind for doing so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I could see though, it might be kind of fun. Of course, then you don't get back to, you don't have the right balance and you don't have the right everything. But having 3 or 4 shafts is sort of different flex and letting people see that.
Exactly.
And
let them tell
that could be.
Yeah. Let them tell you. We can do it with drivers. We can do it with irons. We can compare, right? We can see it and feel it and compare. But boy, if somebody's doing it, I wish they'd call me, because the idea of, okay, this is a softer flex at this weight, this is a stiffer flex at this weight, this is somewhere in between. Yeah. And, and that was the whole goal of the new putter company, was to be able to do that for somebody.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that I'll give you a scenario that, all right, so you're looking at an ultra low torque, stiff, lighter weight, right? And I won't name a brand, but there's a couple of them out there. All right. That player is typically going to be a connected core rotating stroke. All right. Where everything moves in sync, and I don't want any feel of tension or lag in my hands or in the putter head. I want to move the triangle in one piece. Well, then lighter, higher center of gravity, lighter head, stiffer shaft, that's probably going to match the feel requirement for that player. All right. Now take a, who do we want to pick on? Take a Brad Faxon, right? Or anybody that's playing a little bit of wrist lag in their transition. Okay. Then when you're going to want more feel in the head. You're going to want a lower center of gravity in that putter. You're going to want more feel in the head, and a little softer shaft isn't going to hurt, because that's going to just enhance that feel of lag.
Yeah.
Okay. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, is it measurable? Yeah. If you had the right equipment, it would be, but nobody could afford the equipment. Right. So you've got to depend on the player's feel. How does that feel? Oh, I like that. Oh, that, the only thing you can see is if you had them on some sort of device that was measuring timing, or even just videotape them, right? You can see transition tendencies.
Yeah.
And you can say, maybe if we tighten this up a little bit, you'll feel better about the strike. And then maybe you won't rush to hit it quite so hard. That's the unknown, right?
Yeah.
If I'm Arnold Palmer and I'm looking for do I swing a softer shaft putter harder or try and hit it harder because of the feedback I get from the putter? And we think they do.
Yeah.
And we can, and the thing is that I want to say this, this is just part of our conversation. This is not to promote any one shaft, right? This is just to find the feel. It's not going to cost you any more money. We're not adding to the fit to do this. We're just saying this is part of the process that we think you should consider.
But I'm also betting, now that we're talking about this,
Yeah.
that somebody like a Brad Faxon or a Lauren Roberts, or as Arnold did, or even
Right.
Jack, probably didn't just grab a shaft and do it. They probably went through some of this mental stuff too, with finding it, because feel became so important for them.
No doubt. I mean, what was the one that Scotty used? Is it the YSC, True Temper YSC shaft he used for years?
Yeah.
There's a very definite feel to that, and it's measurable, right? And so you got a lot of guys that kind of developed the timing. You see a similar timing with the guys that use that stroke or with that shaft. Very similar.
Yeah.
And you see the softness in the wrist, the feel of the wrist. You can see it. And if you measured it in terms of stiff and regular and extra stiff, it's a firm R. If you want to go that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So if let's say we take Brad and say, hey, Brad, we've got this $400 shaft that's much tighter, much stiffer. Don't think he'd like it. I don't think he'd like it. And he would, he'd go back to the field that was successful, certainly. Right.
Yeah.
And so they say, yeah, but the dispersion on this is better in tests. Well, I'm not hitting it in the middle of the face as often as I did with my old shaft.
Well, he's doing things that are intrinsic to his stroke to hit the center
Exactly,
of the face.
exactly.
That's
And I think that
all connected.
And I think that for the casual player out there who's going, oh, this is fun to talk about, but it doesn't apply to me. Sure it does. You just never had the opportunity to compare.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me how people, once you give them the opportunity, what they really can feel. It's never ceased to amaze me.
Yeah.
That it's not so much, it's just experience as much as it is talent. Now the talent comes when you learn what you need and you use it, right?
Yeah.
But the experience and the feel is, and it's really fun with the young guys, the young people, and to say, what's that feel like? That's different. Yeah. Can you describe it? Well, compared, it's clickier is the one I get a lot. It's a little firmer hit. Do you like that? I don't know. And so that's good. That's good feedback. It's,
Right.
If he's not sure, then maybe that softer, cushionier, maybe that's the blow we're looking for, that feel that we're looking for. The 8802 feel is what I call it. That's the soft feel, as opposed to and the other thing, if you're playing a double bend shaft in your putter, it's stiff. And if it's not, it flexes high. It flexes under your hands, not but when they bend those shafts, that tightens it up as much as they can tighten up anything.
Now that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that, but
yeah, they really play tip stiff, and so it kind of makes me laugh as I think probably the stiffest on the bend profile that we've seen are double bends, and they'll bend high, right? So then you look at all right, so the double bends high. It's stiff at the tip. Well, that kind of lends itself to the connected, rotating shoulder, big muscle stroke, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we see. We see the teaching trending toward the face balanced mallet with the stiff shaft. The problem that they ran into was that they started making the head so heavy that threw everything off. Because now the weight of the head is pulling on you as opposed to and feeling it in the shaft. So that's kind of that. Looking at everything, not just looking at just flex. So it's hard to have this conversation without talking about those other things because
it's fun though.
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah. I mean, it's fun to look back. I'm old enough now that I can look back historically and can see the shafts and the putters. So you take the guy in my era was TP Mills, right? He was the
Yeah.
Scotty Cameron of my era. Custom made putters for what was an extraordinary, putters were $60 and TP Mills was getting 500.
Wow.
And all of them had that high feel, that pencil shaft, right?
Yeah.
Well, the guys that loved those strokes had very rhythmical, very slow strokes. You didn't see anybody popping at TP Mills.
Huh.
And then you go, and then the brilliant guy, Tad Moore, got to always give Tad credit because he was so far ahead of it. But he was the first. This isn't new. He offered flexes in the MaxFly putter line that he did for Dunlop. 1s, 2s, and 3s. And I've never really gotten clear, was it flex or was it weight or was it the heavier ones were stiffer? And but you could match your rhythm to the model that you wanted. Well, that has always made perfect sense to me. I've told Ted that a number of times. I talked to him. I said that was brilliant, and I've almost made it a quest in my life to figure out how you matched people up, because it just made perfect sense. If rhythm and timing has anything to do with your putting stroke, then you need to consider what's connecting your hands to the putter.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then all of it doesn't make it doesn't work, right?
Now, how about though and then there's the trend to the big counterweighted putters, but you're
right?
sort of talking about that already, and and what Lucas is doing and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I mean, longer putter, probably heavier head.
Yeah.
That
Stiffer.
same match has to occur with those things
Absolutely. Too. Stiffer, no give at all, right? Because they're looking for that. In Lucas's case, that stroke, hand and shoulder, right hand, left hand, and shoulder are all moving in sync. And so he doesn't want that putter to have any variance from what his right hand's doing. So there's no rotation, there's no feel component to that. It's back and it's through. So that I think that's a LAB shaft. That's in that. The really, really firm graphite stiff. So they don't have to, that thing doesn't have to weigh 4,000 pounds. It can be a controllable weight, and you can move that center of gravity down at the bottom where he's kind of feeling it with his right hand. So he can sink his right hand to the putter head. And so, but it's I'm sure it is very stiff and it is really low torque.
And it's something that I make a connection with now too, because Acura has different putter shafts.
Yeah, they've done.
And I think they have a wide range of flexes in their putter shafts too.
Theirs are based on weight, and because I think they have similar bend profile, but they have different weight.
Yeah.
And so they're basically stiffer, heavier, or lighter, softer. One of the things that we're putting anything in one. If I can shave down a broom handle, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we've had a lot of fun with is lighter and stiffer and heavier and softer. And using whatever's available to get that combination to see if that helps.
Heavier and softer. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other one that I've seen and some of my fitting buddies have used is the T2C shaft. Remember that one?
I just know of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I spec'd how stiff it was once, and it's pretty stiff.
Yeah. Pretty stiff.
But it's about 220 grams or something like that. Right?
Yeah. We're doing a lot with 90 and 100 gram shafts. And then, maybe 60, 80 gram grips and 360, 50, 60 gram heads.
Yeah.
I'm not, if my preference ever comes out, I always think it's safer to go less weight than more weight. But you can't deny Ricky and Lucas and the young man that won the Open, and the idea of
Brian Harmon.
Yeah. And the guy that won the US Open. He's not a player I'm really familiar with, but those guys are all using heavy, long, stiff shafts, heavy grips, heavy heads, and literally letting the putter swing them almost instead of them swinging the putter. So you can't deny that, right? So we've been experimenting with one with 160 gram shaft, which is really quite stiff, and and a 360 gram head and a 17-inch grip on a 39-inch putter.
Yeah.
And some people, it really feels good to them, and it helps their stroke a lot, calms everything down.
Now,
Okay.
I'm guessing then the arm lock guys, it's almost the same thing too, right?
Yeah.
Which you haven't talked. Basically, they have to they're not going to want to feel any flex in that.
Yeah, you want now, but it becomes the left arm, not the right hand, right?
Right.
And so now I want the putter to move. I want the feel of the putter to be in sync with my left arm and my left hand. And so those, again, that goes to stiff. That goes to playing stiffer and possibly heavier. Because now I've got this one lever that I've got to move. And so I want it to feel one piece. Why else would you arm lock it if you didn't want a one piece move? So putting some bend in there, it lags behind. Well, then, so how do if I get a feel of a lag? Well, when you get 360, 380 gram heads, 400 gram heads, you're going to feel a lag.
If you do it,
you're going to feel it, right? And so what are you going to do with that lag? Well, you're going to flip it.
Yeah. You're
going to release that. You're going to want to, I got to undo that lag. Well, then I flip it, then I add loft and I hit it just as bad. So, I think in some cases, some of those guys are better served using the same mentality, but lightening up the head so they're literally just swinging the shaft.
Yeah.
Right. And then the head is there and it produces the hit, but you're not looking for any head feel there. Your feel is all in, you're swinging the shaft. And we've talked about that before, but we think there are three types of players. There's the type of player that swings the grip and the shaft. There's the type of player that swings the sensitivity is where's the head. And so where do you swing? Where's your area of focus? Are you core swinging your hands? Is it your arm swinging the shaft, or is it your hands swinging the putter head?
Yeah. So and
does
that
everything
connects
react to
with
that?
balance point too.
That's
I'm
right.
guessing.
That's right. And so
exactly
that's where we get into balance point, and also what flex works best for what you're trying to do. If your hands are swinging the club head, then you're probably, we're going to talk about a softer shaft to start. If your hands are hitting the ball, then we're going to look to stiffer. Okay. If you're swinging, again, if your combination of swinging your arms with a little hit at the bottom, then that seems to fall into that YSC shaft that we saw in the Cameron. Those guys all had that little bit of hit at the bottom, right at the bottom of the arc, a little bit, and it basically coincides with them releasing their wrist. And so that field, we think that matched up, and that was where we would start the conversation for that player. And then, then going from there, the farther you travel up, the source motion travels into your body, the more we're going to tighten things up, stiffen them up a little bit.
Well, so what's an inquiring putter guy want to do as sort of an end? I mean, not just assume, for example, that stiff is for sure going to be good for them, but make sure if you're going to go that route, I mean, that it really connects with how you move the putter.
Yeah.
And find ways to find somebody that will allow you to look at something that's different, right?
Yeah. Define your stroke is, and I every day people are inquiring to me whether they sign up for a lesson or whatever program it is, or they don't, that I'm going to tell them what to look for in their stroke. What are the characteristics of your stroke? Do you feel your stroke in your hands or in your chest? Do you use your wrist? Do you not use your wrist? What kind of, if you were to describe your tempo to me, tell me what your actual tempo is. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Right.
I mean that it's 2-1, right?
Yeah. Am I 2-1, or am I a little quicker to the ball, or am I a little slower to the ball? What, basically where do you apply the effort in your stroke? And we can give you some feedback on that. So then when you want to go try one, you know what you're looking for. Instead of, oh, you know what, that sounds pretty good because they said I get a tighter dispersion in the advertising, so I'll go and try that. And then they're not feeling good, and then you feeling bad about yourself because everybody thinks this is the greatest thing, and it doesn't match what you need. It's never you. it is you because you're doing the best that you can. But we feel very strong, and I'm much more strongly opinionated about this now than maybe I was 10 years ago. Because when I was introduced to Mike Adams and Terry Rolls and the idea of matching up trail hand orientation to stroke, it became really clear that there are subconscious preferences in the body, that the body wants to do something and you don't. And I'll give you an example, and I'd like to put this out because I think it'll help a lot of people. If you think that the putter should follow a straight line in your stroke, straight back, straight through, right? But a visual straight back and straight through, where it trails a yardstick. Then if your posture and your body type doesn't match up to that, you're going to struggle, because your body says, we want to do this, and your mind says, I want it to do this, and you're just in a fight and you never win the fight. Because even if your brain, your preference overcomes your body's tendencies, it's going to show up in the least opportune moment that you're going to go back to it. Like, for example, Tony, we know that if you have going back to the shaft flex, right? We know that if you play with a really what we call under or strong right hand, that the swing tendency is inside down the line with that grip. The arm wants to swing elbow in, hand in, open the face, rotate back to the ball and hit it from the inside. And if you try and make it go anywhere other than that, you're really going to struggle. It's very clear. It is very clear. And I won't be able to convince everybody, but that's what these seminars and all this is talking about, how we took those concepts and applied it to putting. And it's been game changing for some guys. Yeah. I had one this year that was the craziest one ever. A phone call on a putting green prior to a professional event turned into the 3 best finishes the guy had in 10 years just from that alone.
Wow.
So it's happened more than once, but I think what's important is then once you establish the tendency, right? My hands want to do this. My arms want to do this. My body wants to do this. Then what do we do to the putter to make sure that it doesn't do anything to fight that?
Yeah.
Right. We don't want it. We don't want the shaft of the putter or the weight of the head, because they're intertwined, right? I can put an extra stiff on a 380 gram and get it to play like an R. So you've got to consider the length of the putter and the length and the weight of the head and all the things that club fitters know you have to consider, right? You can't just pick one out and go, I'm going to put this in this, because you might just be going backward.
Well, I think that's a great place to end for today. We had a couple other things we thought we were going to do, but we did the right things today, so that's good. Yeah. So you're changing a little bit how people are contacting you through the web. You've got this Substack stuff and anything, and
I've just moved. There's a new it's called Substack. It's something new to me that has been much easier for me to carry the blog and everything. But what we're transitioning into to our putter company and how that's going to work. And so what's available for the public is going to be different than what's available for the members of my community.
Yeah.
And it just comes with, if you buy a putter from me, you get everything and open conversation. So anything we've ever studied or going to study in the future is accessible to you. So
kind of neat. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the one way I wanted to do it. And the problem was, you try and raise money for that. Well, business people says, well, how are you going to make any money at that? And I said, well, we're just going to sell some putters and you won't lose any, because I won't build more than I can sell. But finally it was, I'm very grateful to the guys that came to me and said, Bruce, we've been using your prototypes for a while. And when are you going to start this company? And so that's how it was born. But basically the program is, you're going to get fit with the putter with all the stuff that we've discussed is an open conversation. You're going to have access that if it doesn't work, you can send it back. We'll rebuild it. You're going to have a practice mat that is custom to your style of stroke. So you'll know that you got the right one. And if something changes, we'll change that. We'll trade it out. Some fun stuff like a limited edition head covers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But a Zoom meeting every month for the community members. If you own one of the putters, there's going to be a Zoom meeting where I'm going to talk about, you and I might do one where we'll talk about the fitting aspect of it and what you've learned and what we're doing. But just there'll be this constant Zoom conversation that you have access to, and also a newsletter that will talk about pertinent stuff. And then, but also it's an instruction manual for the putter that you buy.
Wow.
And we're not guaranteeing the results. We're just guaranteeing we'll stick with you as long as you use it.
And that it's going to be as good a match to what you do
best I
as
can
is
do.
possible.
Yeah, best I can do. And we've got a design that we really like. It's a compilation of a lot of stuff that I've thought's worked over the years that it's really turned out to be it's worked out well. If you have a conscious preference of a putter, I'm probably not going to fit. I'm probably not your guy. We're totally building these putters on how they respond to how the player moves. And we've narrowed it down, got it to a manageable level, but I'm sure if things keep going, there'll be options on other stuff. We'll learn more about it. But the heads run from 320 grams to 360 grams. The shaft options are endless. So the overall weight options are endless.
Yeah.
And we're going to build, each one's going to be different some way. They're all going to look the same and they're all going to be totally different.
Yeah.
What we're fitting grips. We're fitting grips to trail hands requirements. And anyway, a lot of fun. Just
neat stuff.
Just a total ball. Yeah. Really having fun with it.
Well, like I said in the beginning, this is a great opportunity for people to understand and get it's pretty deep dive about shaft flex, but shaft flex is a deep dive.
It is
for somebody that wants to make more 20-foot putts, for sure.
I think if you're going to make the investment in your game like that, if you're that type of player, then it helps to have all the information you can get. And it would be me and it'd be somebody else. And the only ones I wouldn't listen to are the guys that say, well, it just doesn't make any difference because that's what they prefer to think. Yeah. That it's easier on me if I just prefer that it doesn't make any difference. It does. Yeah. It makes a difference. And so, whether you think it's a credible difference or not, that's totally up to the player. But, and what do you want? What do you need out of your stroke?
Yeah.
If I'm just looking for forgiveness, that's easily done. That's what we do these days, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm looking to make more 20-footers because I want to shoot my age, then we got to.
Not. What are you trying to jump at me here?
No. Is that
I'm teasing? That me too. That's right.
That was always. I'm not playing at all anymore. But that was always. I thought that would be the ultimate to. What's the youngest I could shoot my age? So when I was 39, I did it. I played 9 holes and shot my age. But yeah. But I think that's quite a feat. I was always. When Arnold did it at the Hope. He shot his age at the Hope, and what Bernard Langer's been doing, and just
unbelievable.
I think it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, very good. I'm going to stop the recording in a second,
hey,
but we have to hang in here to make sure everything is right. But thanks for taking the time.
Sure.
Again.
There's a perfect example of a guy that went from flexible to stiff, Bernard Langer.
Yeah. Well, it has to be, right?
Right. All right.
And he did, right?
He absolutely did. Yeah.
Wow.
That was the one I had listed as the ones that made a big difference. And that one actually came to me pretty late.
He's doing pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce. Like
Thank you,
said,
Tony.
hang in a second.
I will.
Here.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Bruce, thanks for this interview today. I just love how you shared both the details but also practical details of how putter shaft flex can matter to help golfers improve their putters and their putting performance. I'm sharing a new link, which is called a Substack link, for how you can connect with Bruce, and also link to his previous Burnt Edges Consulting blog page that describes other ways to get in touch with him. And I'll also note that if you want to do a much deeper dive into things that Bruce has shared with me in the past on putter fitting, there are now 7 podcast posts with him on my website that you can access. Go to the blog and podcast link on my website and search for Bruce Rearick to find all of the podcast links. My shout out today is related to the podcast episode that I just recorded with Jason Kuhn, episode 212. There's been a lot of information posted online about his efforts to help Lucas Glover, remember him with his 2 wins, overcome his, I believe, 10-year battle with the yips. Way to go, Lucas, and congrats for what you do with athletes, Jason. I'm reposting the link to episode 212 and also to a Golf Channel article about Jason's successful efforts to help Lucas Glover. Awesome stuff. If this podcast and all of my podcasts and blog posts benefit you, remember that there's a Support the Golf Improvement Podcast link in the show notes for this episode. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. Well, that's it for today. I'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks with a new episode and potentially a big surprise that I'm really excited about sharing with all of you soon. Until then, take care, God bless Ukraine, and God bless America.
Game Improvement Golf, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time. www.gameimprovementgolf.com